I have a very good picture of it of me trying to get away, like looks like I'm screaming while someone's pulling me back into the little Debbie pile. It was 122 loads swallowed and then 10 to the face. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about swallowing that much cum.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot. We figured it out at dinner. It's like a little under a liter, I think, at the end of the day.
Boy.
Hey, I'm Ariel Demure.
Hi, I'm Maddie Collins. Hey guys, I'm Maya Wolf.
Hi, I'm Little Puck.
I'm Bree Mills, and you're listening to the Adult Time Podcast.
Sophia Locke, welcome to the Adult Time Podcast.
Thank you.
You are surrounded by Tims.
Oh, I'm very happy about this. He's very cute.
This is our first time actually meeting in person.
It is.
Which I love. Just because we get to spend the next hour chatting, and that's the best way to get to know people, and nobody does it anymore.
Exactly. I know. I'm excited about it too.
So you have worked with us, you know, in a bunch of different projects for a bunch of our different teams. We're actually going to shoot our first piece of content together later today.
Yes.
And you come so, like, every time I hear your name, it's coming from somebody that's like, oh my gosh, you've got to work with Sophia. So I'm like fangirling, like I'm super excited.
Well, I hear the same about you, so I am the same level.
So some magic will be made.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Awesome. But first we're gonna get to know each other. We're gonna chat. We are starting all the episodes of the Adult Time Podcast with a little icebreaker round now.
Fun.
So we're gonna play a game. The game I chose for us is Hot or Not. Okay, it's a very highly intellectual game.
Great.
But I would love to know your opinion on the following subjects and whether you consider them hot or not. So I want to start with, again, just an absolute great way to get to know each other. Your thoughts on mutual masturbation, hot or not?
Oh, kind of not for me. There isn't enough connection physically, and I'm not really much of a voyeur. I am an exhibitionist, so that part of it I don't mind, but I'd rather, if I have another person there who I'm attracted to and excited about, I'd rather we be touching each other.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because mutual masturbation is most often just doing your own thing side by side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. I would
great.
agree. I am a little bit more of a voyeur, so I could get into that element, but you need to be able to like quickly put your, reach out and make a connection.
Right. It would be slow torture for me, I think.
What are your thoughts on sexting? Something I am terrible at and do not do.
I enjoy it, but I just don't do it that often. Again, it's one of those I would much rather be in person, but I feel like it's a nice build-up to seeing someone, and I think it can be really exciting.
Yeah. I guess in today's day and age, too, one must be careful about what one puts in a text, right? So you would... You also, when it comes to sexting or like dirty DMs or something, you just need to know that might come back to haunt you depending on how naughty you get.
I have no discretion that way.
Yeah.
I do not care. There is much worse in video form. I couldn't care less if my dirty texts or sex got out.
There you go. Good. I think I would just be terribly embarrassed. Orgasm denial. Is that a hot or a not?
It's a not for me, even though I kind of started in BDSM and I like a lot of aspects to it. No, let me come. That's rude.
What about with your partner? You also want them to come, or do you like the kind of the little bit of the power dynamic that comes from, let's say, controlled orgasms?
It's just okay. It's just I kind of prefer that they're so excited and have to kind of hold themselves. But my game is seeing if I can get them there, not on a professional set, but maybe just pushing a little bit further where they're panicking and gonna come a little bit too quickly. So
there you go. Not necessarily great for running time in professional sets. Great.
Would never.
Great
in a professional set. Absolutely.
All right. So now it gets a little weird to round this out. Weird and could be maybe an amazing way. How do you feel about tickle fetishes?
Ooh, I don't want to do it, but I support it. I think it's a really fun thing. I would imagine that people who have this fetish, it would probably be tough to find willing participants because I think a lot of people it's horrifying for. No, thank you, but good on you.
Good on you. It's true. If you're someone who has a tickle fetish, how do you find community? I mean, there's FetLife, there's places to find community, but like, it's not something that most people like.
Yeah, I think so.
What about what about alien abduction role play? Ever done it? Hot or not?
I'm going to go with hot.
Okay.
Because I have such a thing for abduction and being like used for my body or experimented on. I think that's a really hot thing. So sure, let's make it an alien too. Why not?
So you wouldn't be the alien in this case.
Oh,
no. You would be the one being abducted by the alien.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Please take me, keep me. Please don't do the anal probe part.
No. All right, finally, sploshing, which for those who may not know is, please define it and then tell us if you think it's hot or not.
Sure. It's food play and mixing food with sex, which is not a thing for me necessarily, but I used to go to parties in Vegas and they would be like 80-person kink parties and each week had a theme. One of the weeks, the theme was sploshing. And so I helped unwrap hundreds of Little Debbie cakes into a giant tarped area. And then I wrestled with panties on because of the sugar, obviously, with a bunch of women. It was a lot of chocolate and a lot of smashed chocolate. So I'm going to let you imagine what that looked like.
Yeah.
And the smell of sugar in the air was so strong and nauseating that it just turned me off from food play.
Yeah. I'm just that is not a good visual.
No, I have a very good picture of it of me trying to get away, like looks like I'm screaming while someone's pulling me back into the Little Debbie pile.
Plus the amount of prep work that it takes for a splosh of that size, right? Like is enough to turn anybody off. If you've peeled 500 Little Debbie's cakes, you don't want, you're done at that point.
Pretty much. It was a cool thing to say I've done, which is a lot of my experiences. Like, let me just do it just to say I've done it and try it, but not again. Thanks.
All right. So we've talked about a lot of knots. My hot or not list was for the most part.
Oh, no.
No.
That's true.
No, it is true. This is interesting. So I just got to ask, what are some of the hots for you? Like, what's like your kind of like right now? Because I know everybody changes, everybody's taste is a little different. Like right now, what's at the top of your hot list?
Objectification. That one stayed up there pretty strongly for most of like my adult life. Gangbangs. Just like being used as a set of holes is like my main kind of kink. I really like that. I like kind of blanking out a little bit. For aliens or not aliens.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the one strong hot was the alien abduction.
I also have a really strong sleep fetish, and I feel like I can never really do it, unfortunately.
No. And for those who may be curious as to why, obviously within professional content, we adhere to really strict kind of guidelines in terms of scenarios, and we always want to make sure that we're promoting consent in scenes. And if somebody is sleeping, they cannot be consenting. So that's why you do not see, generally speaking, any sleeping scenes. But a lot of people do have the fantasy of, like you said, kind of you being used, bodies being used, being in vulnerable positions, in sexual positions. So it's interesting, how we navigate that, right? Like between what we can create as art and show for like ethical consumption.
Sure.
That, dips into fantasies that we're not able to actually talk about, right? So how do people live out those fantasies in a safe way when you can't really watch them, right? So it's an interesting thing. But you've had a really interesting career, and I want to talk about that because it's, like I said, our first time meeting, and I know a lot about you, but it's usually like what you see from social media, and so that's not necessarily the most, accurate. But you have had a journey where you came into the industry and you retired for a good period of time, and then you came back. So I think I want to start there. Over the course of your journey, maybe tell us about how you first got involved in sex work, maybe what led you to the decision to take a break, and then what led you back, and what you've seen in terms of the differences in the industry throughout your career.
Sure. I started in 2010 with webcam work, and that was really exciting because in my personal life, I had gotten into BDSM with a partner and just really exploring my sexuality. And so this felt like a really fun kind of corner of the internet, maybe no one would find out, way to explore that and to make a little bit of money. And I just fell in love with it and felt like I kind of never turned back. So I did that for 7 years. And then I had always wanted to work for kink.com. And so when I felt ready for that and ready to kind of be more on the internet than I had been comfortable being before, I had a friend who had a connection with them at the Armory, and they said, this woman, Sophia, is actually genuinely into this. You should just try it. Try her out. So my first scene was a hogtied scene that was very intense at the Armory, and it was fantastic. So I worked for mostly that company and a couple others for about a year and a half while I was camming. So it was really just fantasy fulfillment and this excitement to go and be on camera and live out some of my crazier fantasies in a professional, safe environment.
And the Armory is like the dream place to do that.
Yeah.
For maybe explain for those that don't know what the Armory was, like a real quick 411 on what that place was and why it was so special to like a good portion of our community.
Sure. It was a giant Armory building in San Francisco that Peter Ackworth, I believe, bought a long time ago, and it just had incredible kind of dungeon sets, and you could go and you could stay overnight, and they had their entire production operation there. So the green rooms and the admin rooms, and then all of these really, really cool, genuinely kind of scary sets. And you just felt so immersed in it when you went there. And it was a well-oiled machine of just you go and you shoot and you stay. And they had all the contraptions that you could ever want for BDSM, production.
Like a sort of like a immersive fun house for safe, BDSM production. All right, so you worked with Kink for that year and a half, got to live out in a very immersive way at the Armory, the Fantasies. And then what happened?
Look, honey, the first step towards realizing a dream might be building a family. This is Grace, and she's gonna be able to take care of you no matter how sick you feel.
Where are you going?
I need to go shopping.
I already have everything prepared for you.
Hey, you can't drink that much caffeine. Honey, it's just not a good time. Okay, it's just not a good time.
Matthew, please.
It's just...
Matthew, just give me your hand! Give me your hand! Give it to me!
Get out of my way.
It's just fine.
Get out of my way.
What's her temperament like?
Worrying.
Not good.
I want you to make me mother.
Let's take some time to think about it.
I want you to make me mother.
What do you think?
I don't want you here anymore! I want you to make me a mother.
You're not supposed to be doing this. You know you're on bed rest.
I want you to make me a mother.
We're gonna have to make an incision in her perineum.
I want you to make me a mother.
There you go, Mama. You're doing such a good job.
I want you to make me a mother.
Laura, you are fully dilated. All right, it is time for you to start pushing.
I want you to make me a mother.
I know how sacred motherhood is. You're bringing a baby into this world. Isn't that just so special?
Yeah, I think I did at that point, like maybe 24 scenes for them or something over that year and a half. And then I started working for other mainstream companies and was excited about it. And I had just gotten out of a relationship and then found someone new who was comfortable with what I did, or I thought he was. And then I could tell that there was less and less comfort there. So I started doing less and less, right? Until I decided that I was burnt out and I would retire from the entire industry. So I had been in for 7 years. At that point, it was like 2016-ish, around that time. And I retired completely, basically because I had a partner who I could tell wasn't comfortable, and I wanted to see if I did this, maybe he would be all the way in with me. And so I, dimmed myself and contorted myself to try and be a perfect version for this person. And I quit and I said goodbye to everyone. I basically disappeared as Sophia Locke and went into real estate and moved to like Seattle area or so. And so I did real estate for 5 years, and then we broke up. He left me for a girl we were seeing together. Yeah. And so I had this moment of, why did I change myself and stop doing what I loved to appease this person? And it didn't even keep him after all of that. And so at that point, the industry had completely changed with OnlyFans. And I had a best friend who had worked the entire time through. So I begged her to help me with what OnlyFans was. And peeked my head back into the industry and said, I know I'm probably too old for this now, and you probably don't remember me after 5 years, but I'd like to do this again, even part-time, just so I can be on the internet and around this community of people who just, I felt, got me. And it was the most warm welcome. They said, yes, you're older, but now you're a MILF. Surprise.
Yeah. Welcome back. It is the best time for you to be back.
Fantastic. And it's just, I hit the ground running and I haven't looked back since. That was a little over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have had a second chance and to have the fans that had followed me from before remember me, and to have all of the people in the community, especially the women, embrace me again, that I'm just happy to be here, I guess, you know?
What, it's funny because the experience that you had with your partner at the time is one that I hear like so often, right?
It's very cliche.
But often because it's something that I think is just when you always have to sort of choose between self-identity and identity as a couple and within a relationship. And I think a lot of the times, and I mean, I've been guilty of this too in my life, where like you don't think they can be distinct. Like there has to be a choice.
Sure, there has to be a compromise that actually compromises a part of your identity, and I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah, and but we all have to kind of go through it, you know, to be able to come out the other side and realize like, oh, I do need to hang on to that self-identity, like more than anything else, right? Like so I'm glad that you ended up having the experience that you did, coming back when you did, because you did really come back at a time where it's probably been the best time in the adult industry for performers in general, and in terms of like encouraging autonomy and, you know, self-agency and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be, I'm 3 years late, but I'm happy to be among to welcome you back.
Thank you.
What are some of the biggest things that you noticed, like, you know, especially working with companies now versus, I know you weren't working as much with a broad range of companies back in the day, but what are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed?
It was so great that Kink was so, they prioritized consent so much at that time, even that long ago, that's kind of the same. And I think there has been an evolution with maybe other companies when it comes to the levels of boundary checking and consent and making sure, you know, that everyone feels safe and comfortable. But I've definitely noticed that's kind of continued on, and I guess leveled up with most of the mainstream companies. I do feel like the performers have a little more agency now that they can work for a platform like OnlyFans that's direct to consumer. So they don't necessarily need the companies as much. So that feels like there's a little bit more at play there, that people can advocate for themselves better. Yeah,
100%. Well, and it is like, it's people, I find, and as a producer, I love the fact that when you come to set, it's now more often than not because you want to.
Because you enjoy it.
Yeah,
right.
you want to, it's not a question of, well, and just in terms of like one of my biggest learnings I think I've been producing for like 12 years now.
Amazing.
One of my biggest lessons that I've learned is that, you know, the importance of informed consent and how that begins at the very inception of a project. And don't take for granted the information is being passed along. You know, as the producer, it's my responsibility that you see the scenario in advance. You get to know who your co-stars are in advance. You get to, you know, and get to be able to say yes or no all along the chain. And I think being able for everybody to kind of stand up and say like, no, I'm going to make sure I CC that performer directly on that call information, or like, I need a confirmation they've read it before we can complete. We wouldn't have, you know, when I started, that didn't happen.
Right.
And it was sort of like, you don't mess with that, you know, everybody has their roles and you don't. But thankfully now people really, you know, are so much more on the same level. And I love that personally.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad from that perspective, it's made a lot of sense for you guys too. And it keeps you protected as well, because then there isn't somebody who's there, doesn't necessarily want to be there, and then a couple days later on Twitter are upset about it and you had no idea because you didn't have that.
Or worse, they show up and they don't know what they're showing up for.
That's
I mean,
terrifying.
like as much as, you know, and even if you had tried to send the information, like that was our kind of first call of action in the wave of like kind of, you know, the Me Too movement, and, you know, really recognizing areas where we needed to sort of step up and make sure that, you know, high production standards were being upheld. For me, it was the idea of like, what do you mean you got a booking and all you got was like girl, and the date?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
But for so long, that was how it was. So now it's like, no, you are going to get a gigantic proposal.
Yeah.
And, you know, because that's what everybody deserves. Like, and it also encourages the performers themselves to make sure they know that. Because I think there's certain performers like, yeah, you know, my agent knows what's best and they book me for this and I'll show up, it'll be fine. It's like, no, read the stuff in advance, read the call information. I am going to send it out to you more than the night before. And I do expect you to read it. We all have to hold each other accountable. Right. And it I think, like, again, more than liability, it's just like, that's just professionalism, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
And from kind of a branding and career perspective, I have made the very intentional choice to only do the things I enjoy doing.
Yes.
And I think for me, it's like multi-levels of good things for me. But it's that way I feel like I won't burn out because I'm doing all the things I enjoy doing. And then there's an authenticity to it that ideally people watching me will be able to rely on.
Yeah.
And hopefully that keeps people coming for more because they know I'm actually enjoying what I'm doing. And I mean, overall, I just get to love my job. So
Yeah. And it's we work a lot with Lexi Luna, who's one of our brand ambassadors, and
great.
she has a very similar path where she actually created like a one-page like brand attributes. These are the scenes I like. These are, you know, the types
great.
like. And for me as a producer, it's like the best.
Yeah.
Because I can look at that and now it's going to spark all kinds of ideas. And of course, you know, if I cast you in something I know you like, it's going to be a better scene.
It's better for everyone.
It's better for everybody.
Yeah.
And then you can even be like, okay, so, you know, if you like, you know, even by you telling me I like the kind of, you know, objectification, free use concept, we can do that.
Great.
And now next time I'm going to do that, I'm going to think, I know who really likes that.
Perfect.
And it's so I love just being upfront about like, this is my sandbox. This isn't a bad thing that I have a sandbox.
Right.
Play in it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Let's, like, you know, like you said, be authentic and also it's a great way to communicate. So yeah. I'm all about talent who know exactly what they want to do and don't waver on that.
Sure, and I think part of that's age too.
Yeah.
At this point where I'm just, you know, I've tried almost everything, I've done almost everything. I do know what I like, and I feel like I'm very adventurous. I'm thrill seeking. I think that's why I'm in this industry, is that this is the safest way to get that adrenaline rush.
Yes, yeah,
And everyone's
definitely.
watching and there are cameras and it's maybe a new person, but it's just in such a safe way.
Yeah.
You know, where I'm not jumping out of planes anymore or going to bars and meeting somebody. You know, it's channeled this for me.
Do you think that like your yes list was something that you kind of needed the experience of trying out a bunch of stuff to figure out, or do you think that that's something that, you know, you've always held true pretty much to the stuff you wanted to do from the get-go?
I was very open to trying most things, I think, and I've just always felt that way. And so that way, there wasn't really much that I wouldn't try as long as it probably wouldn't kill me.
Yes, or involve 500 Little Debbie's cakes. Although you did try that once.
I did try
You
it.
did try that once.
I'll do it. I'll try it once. But just the process of trying things has made it so that my yes list is pretty specific.
Yeah.
But it's shifted over time. I mean, I thought I knew exactly what I was into and exactly what I wasn't into, and then surprised myself by kind of being into the mommy stuff. And that was, if you had told me at 22 I would like that, I would tell you you're crazy. So I'm still open to those tastes changing.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of crazy scenes, if I look here at
so
my cue
excited.
cards. Okay, so I know you've done a lot of travel to shoot, not only here in the States, but in Europe too, and internationally.
Yes.
So how would you compare the international scene to the U.S. scene in terms of porn production?
So I was shocked to find out it's almost identical. Pleasantly surprised that it was almost identical, because I think the fear of the unknown, and especially when it comes to sex work, it's scary to go outside of your comfort zone, to go outside of your country, to have different laws in place. But it's the same over there. It's kind of lovely. It's the same paperwork. Some of the larger umbrella companies own things over there too. So you're filling out some of the same paperwork, actually. The only difference really is that you just wait for someone to tell you to do something in English.
Yeah.
So,
And they
which
often
can
have
be kind of
translators
fun.
on set, right? Or at least somebody on set who can serve.
Oh,
for
it's like somebody,
translation.
somebody always speaks English at
Yeah.
least, pretty well, enough to be able to communicate what you're expected to do. But it's been a really cool, I mean, even some of the testing requirements are stronger
Yes,
than over
I've
here.
heard
And
that.
so it's just been such a wonderful opportunity to travel and have it paid for and to get in different markets and get exposure in different markets. And it's been a blessing.
What's been your favorite city or country that you visited, let's say in the last year?
I loved Vienna. And I kind of hopped over just when I was shooting, I think in Prague or Budapest, and I just thought it was beautiful. And then the next time I was over there, I booked a scene there, but it was only for a day. So I didn't really get to experience it much, but I really liked Vienna.
I know that we have, we primarily shoot here in the States, but we do have a couple of European crews that work for us. And I know the big thing with us over the last 2 years was making sure that all of the documentation was translated into all the specific countries. Even if you say you're based in Budapest, you might have talent coming in from surrounding countries. Yeah. So that was a interesting challenge, just to make sure that we were representative of like any potential language that you could read it in your native language. And the other thing was training on how to do our consent meetings, but doing it in translating that and translating the trainings and stuff. So
that's a lot.
But all in the spirit of making sure that regardless of where you're shooting, that like there's a level of professionalism that everybody upholds.
Right, and that's been my personal experience. It's been a really positive one.
Yeah. So what? During your travels, I see here that you have shot some crazy scenes. Some of these first experiences. Yeah. So I'm going to say this all. What was it like to shoot a piss bukkake gangbang? They'll probably bleep that out for certain versions of this. A piss bukkake gangbang.
It was a dream. So I'm a romantic that way.
You are.
I had watched, there was a site called German Goo Girls, and I had watched it and masturbated to it before I was ever in the adult industry. And so when I saw that they had started up production, or at least I had noticed it on Twitter, X, I reached out to them there. I emailed them and I said, this is my dream site to do. I want to be overwhelmed. I've never done a piss scene I've never done it on camera, right? And I want you to be my first. And they said, can you be in Berlin in 2 weeks? And I was at the gym and I booked a ticket and I said yes. And it was, so imagine masturbating to something and it's this incredible, insane fantasy that you don't think you'll ever actually do. And then you go and you do it and it's better.
Wow.
Than you ever dreamed.
Yep.
I think it was 12 guys and a lot of them wore masks just because that's how the scene works. And I was just overwhelmed and they were like, are you going to swallow the piss? And I was like, I don't know, man. I've never done it before. Yeah. I did. It was great. I was absolutely feral. And it was just such an incredible experience. I've done 5 scenes for them now. Which I think they're only available on DVD in Germany, so I have no idea how people get them. But for me personally, it was fantasy fulfillment to the highest degree.
Wow. And what was the sort of day on set like for that? Like you mentioned that it was just like such an intense experience. Was it very much you kind of got in and very quickly they got into the scene, or was there a lot of waiting and anticipation during the day?
It was really interesting the way they structure it is they have 3 women who are shooting that day. So you come in, you get hair and makeup done. The woman who did hair and makeup said, I've been doing this for 11 years and I've never seen anyone so enthusiastic, which I hold dear to my heart with great pride.
You truly are a fan.
I'm a really fan. I'm a big fan. And so you do hair and makeup and then the other girls do as well. And then you kind of take turns, right? You take turns taking the pretty girls, the photo stills that you do. And then you kind of run into, like the first scene is a gangbang with a lot of swallowing and some bukkake, like some facial stuff. And then the other girls go and do those scenes while you are getting your makeup redone for the second scene. So you usually do 2.
Wow.
One of the girls had to leave early to feed her dog the second time I came there. So I did 3 scenes that
Wowie.
day. So it's a really long day, and it is a very messy day, but you have your own green room. Everyone's really respectful. The men who are involved in it are really respectful. And there's maybe 3 or 4 who are main talent, and the rest are like helpful come and piss gentlemen.
Yes, yes. The crowd, as we call it.
They're actual, yeah.
What's it like? I mean, just in terms of, let's say you're doing a 2 or 3 scene day and it's such an adrenaline rush, and then you're going to go through that adrenaline rush 2 more times. How do you kind of pace yourself in days like that? I feel like I would be completely spent after the first one.
I mean, after the day, I'm pretty spent. But during that day, just because I'm so excited to be there, I can ramp up pretty quickly. I had a director tell me once that, I mean, even in normal scenes, they said, you kind of start at a 7. So I'm just there for the ramp up in the adrenaline. So the dips are fine. I felt like I was able to keep my energy up because as soon as we start, I'm dialed in, I'm focused, and I'm excited.
Well, like you said, it's your ultimate fantasy too, right? So you're just playing all day.
Oh, it's great.
So speaking of fantasies, I hear that you have been in discussions at least about looking at some like large group gangbangs. Is that something that's in your fantasy bucket list as well?
I would love to. I think trying to think. Before the adult industry, I was in a 5-person Brazilian guy gangbang that just happened, which is wild because otherwise that doesn't happen, especially with people outside of the industry. Everyone gets scared or they're weird about protection or something like that. So I was lucky to do that. And then within the industry, I think maybe 6 at a time is the most I've had.
Yeah.
I did do a shoot in Madrid, which was for the site Premium Bukkake, and that was 80 men. But it wasn't a gangbang. It was swallowing. So because they could come multiple times, it was 122 loads swallowed and then 10 to the face.
Wow. Okay. Tell me about that production day.
It was amazing. It was incredible. I was so impressed by the production level that was almost hotter than the actual scene itself.
Because I'm thinking like, I need to know how this day ran.
If we're gonna relive high school, let's relive high school.
Oh my god.
I'm nervous.
What the fuck are you nervous about?
I mean, we haven't seen each other since we all went off to college to begin with. What if they don't even like me anymore?
Spin around. Are you trying to impress someone?
You look great.
Hi.
This is my girlfriend. I hope you don't mind if she crashes your party.
We're gonna relive high school. Let's relive high school.
Oh my god.
I think we're 1 sleeping bag short.
She'll be fine.
Will she though?
It's because you did everything you could to make her feel excluded.
So did you.
Okay, but the difference is I'm gonna make it up to her.
So I'm leaving because you don't want Morgan thinking I'm your girlfriend?
I just don't want to confuse them.
I don't want them thinking I'm your girlfriend either.
Look at you. You came back from college hot.
Paint me like one of your French girls? You really hid being gay from a group of gays?
This is a fucking joke.
So I went to dinner with the director the night before, and I was just kind of nervous about it. Like, tell me about your testing. Tell me about, like, is everyone getting paid? Like, how is this all working? And the spreadsheets this man showed me were so impressive. Like, they get tested down the street. Everyone's tested, of course, but they made it so that the results automatically go into the spreadsheet.
Wow. Okay.
And so as people are tested, you can see who's available. They work from a roster of 300 men in Madrid. Everyone is referral based, so it's not just grabbing someone off the street, and then they kind of test them out. They get paid more if they have a better pop, a better cum shot. So they're motivated. They're very motivated. I had one guy kind of miss my mouth and then quietly heard him go, I'm so sorry. So they're soldiers.
They're well trained.
They're well trained. And then there are 9 fluffers. At least on my day there were. And they were these lovely Colombian women who had their own green room with all pink furniture and candy. And were just so sweet. And so the guys show up, I do like a cum shot where I drink one on like the street, kind of we do an interview and then we have this to start out with kind of. You're given 3 different medications for your tummy because that's a lot of cum.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think one's like a muscle relaxer because it makes you contract. Anyway, that was amazing. And so you take the cum shot on the street with your interview, and then they have a couple people come early who can pop, multiple times. And then you like walk in the door and they give you, this is after paperwork and everything,
course,
all of that kind of stuff. But you swallow some right at the beginning and they start counting there. You do your hair and makeup, your hardcore stills, all of that, or just regular stills. And then everybody shows up and it's this giant room with 80 men. And I'm just kind of peeking through going, and they're all just chatting and, jerking off and kind of getting ready. And then they line up in front of the fluffers while watching my porn on the TV, which was really fun.
Yeah.
So I'm just watching them, and the women sat down and the guys walked in a line and they just blew each one with baby wipes and just in between each one, so that by the time they had done the like kind of mass, the director kind of spoke to everyone. It was in Spanish, so I didn't understand, but kind of like, here's what we're doing today. Here's what's expected of you. Everyone kind of pay attention. And then they started the fluffing. By the time I got there, they were ready to go. I didn't wait, which is incredible for that many cum shots.
Yeah.
They do 10 at a time that you hold in your mouth, and you're looking at the guys for each cum shot, which was kind of fun to have that connection and just be waiting. You hold 10 in your mouth and you swallow. 10 in your mouth and you swallow. And you do that for 50. And then you have a break. You do an interview, which at this point, I wasn't sure how I'd feel about swallowing that much cum.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot. We figured it out at dinner. It's like,
you have muscle relaxants going on.
I did. And it was like a little under a liter, I think, at the end of the day.
Boy, yeah.
Chuck.
I'm speechless. Sophia Locke, I'm listening intently, and please continue.
Fantastic. And so you do like a little interview just to kind of check in and see how you're doing. And I think from the first swallow, I went, oh no, I'm in. I got
this.
In.
Like a pie eating contest.
Love exactly like that. Exact same thing. I was so in, just wanted more. There's one of the fluffers holds a bowl underneath your chin, and she's your scooper.
Okay.
So
Does
helpful.
she have is that her official title?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Scooper.
Yeah.
And so she would scoop anything that was on the outside. Of course, you have to swallow all of it. And then any that didn't get, goes into the bowl. And so you're licking the bowl at the end. So after that, you come back and then you do however many are left and however many more can pop, right? And so they usually only do 5 at the end on the face. And I asked for more. And they were...
You're like, who is
Please,
this woman?
can I? And so I got 10, and I had remembered that during the speech that he gave to everyone, I understood one word in Spanish, and that was ojos, which is eyes. And so when we finished the facial part of it after 122 swallowed and the 10, there was so much in my eyes, and I'm looking through it, just glazed over, loving it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's kind of hot.
Yeah.
And so that was fine. But when we finished, I went up to the director and I said, I recognize that you said eyes in the speech. Did you tell these men to aim for my eyes? And he said, no, you just had mentioned at dinner that you didn't mind if it got in the eyes. And so, of course, they took all of that as like straight shot to the eyeballs. To the eyes. But it was such an incredible experience from start to finish. I was so impressed with the level of organization and safety and consent. I mean, no one touched me who wasn't supposed to touch me. And they were just like such a wonderful product. I've sent them so many Americans. I'm like, if you like this, I recommend it.
Yeah. Okay. I have 3 questions.
Yes.
Okay. The first question is, so you go in this room, because it's like an assembly line. I feel like was it like an assembly line where you had the guys that were like next on deck getting fluffed, right, getting prepped, and then as soon as each one was ready to pop, they came out to you, or or was it like gear them up and then when they're all geared up, they're going to come and finish themselves off?
The latter. So it was that they had kind of fluffed for a while, and then once everyone was pretty fluffed, then it was bring her in, and then there were groups on both sides of me. It did start out with an 8 to 10 minute kind of blow bang situation where you went back and forth between,
So there was a little bit of contact between. Oh no, the fluffers were doing the blow bang.
They were doing that, and then I did do an 8 to 10 minute for each segment of like going back and forth to the right, to the left.
Yeah. Okay. So like kind of a final.
a final
tip
fluff,
over the
if you
final
will.
fluff. Okay, so that's the first question. The second question, my mind is like blanking. So
I'm so excited we get to talk about this. I'm
this
hyped.
is unlike any conversation I've had on this podcast before. This is amazing.
Fantastic.
Okay, so my first question was about the assembly line, how that went. The second question is, so were you on like your knees the whole time?
Yes.
Like how were you made to be comfortable in that position?
I was given a pillow.
Okay.
So I had a pillow for my knees. The hardest part of all of it was my neck. And so about 2/3 of the way through, my sweet, sweet fluffer, Scooper.
Yeah.
It's her official title. She held my head as I was
She was just there like cradling
she was
you?
she was like helping scoop and then kind of holding my head
Yeah.
up. So that was the most difficult part. I will say my stomach didn't love it like that. Like that night I was like a little bit upset.
That's
with
my last question.
But I didn't throw up. Proud of that.
Yeah.
They said about 40% of the girls throw up.
Yeah.
So I didn't throw up, but I was on the plane the next day being like, all right, maybe it won't be an everyday diet.
It's an unusual diet yesterday. Yeah. Okay. So my last question is, what are your eating habits around a day like that? Is it like an anal day where you are kind of fasting beforehand? Do you have like a cheeseburger at the end of that? Like how do you eat when your stomach is full of cum?
I don't really remember, but I don't think I was super concerned about it. For whatever reason, I was just excited to be there, and I probably had like a protein shake or something. You know,
Well, I
just
think,
something for energy.
You had a protein shake.
I
for
sure did.
Ba-doom, boom.
Wow, I walked right into that.
I don't
right
even know what
into
to
that
say
one.
at this point.
That was incredible. Yeah.
Okay, so is that the quote unquote craziest scene that you've ever filmed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that and the piss gangbang one are my top two of all time that I feel like were my most exciting, amazing experiences. Like 10 out of 10 chef's kiss shoots.
It reminds me of, I know I'm going to blank on the name, but maybe there was like a sort of period of time, I want to say the early 2000s, where there was this real like kind of like burst of popularity of scenes that were like the one you did where it was like so-and-so and the 100-person gangbang.
Right. I watched a lot of those when I was, before I got into porn.
A lot of people like kind of remember as their first porn, these sort of crazy, like Savannah and the 150 or what, like these names. So I know that they happen in Europe more often than in the States, but do you think that we're kind of on the precipice of that type of content coming back again? Like just in the sense that like people can watch so much porn, so much, two people on a couch porn, that you always feel like people are looking for the next thing. And that is something you cannot find everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, I feel like people have such specific tastes that I don't know if I've necessarily leveled up in how crazy of the kind of porn I watch. I think some people just forever will want to watch something where it feels really like an authentic connection between two people that's kind of amateur. I love that now we have the opportunity to find what you like. And if you can't see it on a tube site, you can, order it from somebody specific. And I think it's a really beautiful thing that you can consensually get what you like out there.
It's true.
Yeah.
So is there anything left in your porn bucket list after it's been filled with so much cum?
With so much semen?
From that
no, I drank that porn bucket list.
Yeah.
I legitimately can't. Oh, wait. I would love to do, they don't have production anymore, but the Czech fantasy videos where it's like a glory hole, but the women are, exactly.
I know exactly what you mean. Just because they're crazy, like where you go in the room and it's just like butts sticking out of the wall, but there's like 30 butts.
Yes, and then it's all of these men who come in and just like, fuck the holes, which is my, it's like my anonymous hole use thing. I would love to do something like that. I'm in talks with a couple different directors who are trying to set it up again, but I think maybe that one. Otherwise, and I love all of I know this all sounds like I'm absolutely insane, but I genuinely also love the one-on-one, not necessarily that crazy kinky. It depends on what I'm doing the least of, right? So if I haven't had like really intimate, connected sex in a while, then I'm like, oh, like missionary, like in a bedroom, like that would be incredible, But if I haven't done anything crazy in a while, then I start craving that too.
Yeah. Well, someone once told me that porn as a sort of form of entertainment is meant to be the stuff that you can't easily access in your day-to-day life, right? Like it's the stuff that you fantasize about. So that can be roving depending on what you are doing a lot of.
Right. And I'm so lucky that my life is doing all of these things that most people either will never do or fantasize about. I think I'm so lucky to be able to do that. I wish the social stigma was a little less, but I think that's really the only downside for me personally.
Well, I think, part of what I'm trying to do with this podcast is just get a chance to talk to the different personalities within our industry, because we're all here for a kind of, like, I feel like there's a certain, there's a lot of different people within our industry, but there's a sort of common bond where, we are all very open-minded, creative, a little wacky, but very kind of accepting and embracing. And to me, that's just such a, like, I've met the best people I've ever met in my life have been in this industry. So to be able to just shine a light on, with clothes on, we're going to have this conversation. And it can range from crazy stories to like really insightful moments. But I love being able to humanize the people in our industry because after all, we are human, right? So, and I think people forget, like, there's this assumption that because somebody is willing to be that vulnerable on camera, or it just show that side of themselves on camera, that there isn't anything else to them. Like the sort of people believing that adult performers are disposable somehow, which is insane. But it's the one form of entertainment where it's sort of like accepted that you can just like disregard these people as people,
even though everyone's consuming it.
And it's I mean, all forms of entertainment, are the sort of people within each form of entertainment are set up to be scrutinized, and like that's consistent across Hollywood or sports or whatever
any type
form.
of art too.
Any type of art. But yeah, it's the one medium where it's like people forget that, like, one of the most common comments I get, because I like to bring people from the corporate side of our business to come and see production.
Love that. Yep.
And I've had a few recently where, afterwards they're like, I know all the stuff that you do. I know I've read, I've seen all the handbooks and we've seen all the videos, but to actually see how professional it actually is. Because there's this stigma that is so ingrained that, like, oh, we've got to all be, creeps
degenerate. Yeah, exactly. And that you go onto set and everyone's just having this orgy. And I love what you're doing. And if I had kind of an overall goal in this industry, it would be to humanize us as much as possible. And just, if you met me on the street, you would think I was relatively normal. And if I met a random person on the street, I wouldn't know what their deep fetishes or kinks are, but I bet they have them too. And it's okay that they're not comfortable showing that to the world or on camera, but to ostracize me because I am comfortable doing it completely consensually with other adults, I think is really unfortunate. And so I just love being a part of anything that helps shift that in our society.
Yeah, 100%. So you mentioned in your kind of return to performing that one of the fun things you've discovered is, of course, the MILF phenomenon.
Yes.
And that that you've been cast in a lot of the kind of family role play, stepmom type of roles. And it wasn't something you necessarily would have thought you were into before, but you're finding that you're really enjoying it. So what do you enjoy about doing those kinds of roles?
So I had another partner right before getting back into kind of the mainstream side of things or the professional production side of things. And he was switchy. I had always been with kind of more dominant men. And I found myself really enjoying that side of things, of me being a little bit more dominant because I'm naturally submissive. And during one of our role plays, I had this thought that was almost an intrusive thought of, I want him to call me mommy. And it surprised me, but I was so open and vulnerable in that relationship that I felt comfortable doing these kind of silly role plays. So by the time I got booked for these scenes, I had dialogue ready to go.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I know what to say. I also love pushing what is taboo or what could maybe shock someone. I live for saying something in a scene and watching the camera person go, oh, behind the camera. So that's really fun for me. But from an actual personal sexual standpoint, I like that there is that taboo, but it's still nurturing in a way. It's this kind of sweet, twisted way to look at a role play.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first started Pure Taboo, that was really my intention, was that it wasn't going to be the obvious stuff. It was going to be all the subtlety, all the nuances, all the things left outside of the frame, all the long pauses that would make people feel uncomfortable, because it at least leaves you thinking about afterwards,
Right.
You why you jerked off before any sex started, right? Yeah.
Right.
So
right. Which I love, and I love that people, can really genuinely take it as an art form very seriously.
Yes. Yeah.
And make it very cinematic, and it makes you think. And I also, I loved that part of it. I was a little bit concerned coming back in the industry that the really goofy, campy stuff would feel awkward, or I wouldn't be proud of it. And what helped with that was that everyone's in on it, right? We all know it's ridiculous and we lean into it. And then it ended up being one of the more fun things that I do, is the, gasping and fake fainting over, catching people masturbating or whatever. All of that was really fun. And it's so nice to have this job where every day I'm doing something different.
Yes. Yeah.
Whether
do you enjoy the acting part of it?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I was surprised I did. And I've really been leaning into it and actually really having fun with that part too.
So we're going to actually do something. This will be like a good preview, because hopefully when we put this out, it'll be in line with what we're going to shoot later on today. But I actually have a good experiment for you. So it'll be our first time working together. And we're going to be doing a scene for our Mommy's Girl series, which is a long-running series on the GIRLSWAY network. And traditionally, obviously, it's about kind of the stepmom fantasies. Traditionally, it's been kind of treated like a comedy, where the scenes are tongue-in-cheek, but they're fairly light. And I don't often direct them myself. So I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do one, I knew who I was going to have on set today, including you. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do one, we're going to make it an experiment.
Great.
So the story that we're doing tonight, which is called Step by Step Exam, is about a overbearing stepmother.
Specifically named Karen, which I appreciate.
Named Karen.
Love that.
For a reason.
Yes.
Who is overzealous and hyper fixated on the fact that her 25-year-old stepdaughter, who still lives at home, who is very super repressed, super nerdy, super closed off, you're hyper fixated with the fact that she has not bloomed. She doesn't have any boyfriends. She's not going on any dates. She hasn't left the home yet. And you're really, really, really concerned about this in a Karen type of way.
Sure.
And you've decided that there must be something medically wrong with your grown stepdaughter.
Right.
So you're going to take her to a all-female run medical clinic to give her a full exam so that y'all can walk out with some kind of diagnosis.
Sure.
And Allison Ray, who will be playing your very much a grown-up stepdaughter.
Yes.
I'm going to have her play where she's just been under your thumb for years.
The whole time, yeah.
Is completely repressed, is probably just desperate to fuck anybody at this point, but can't get a word in edgewise because you're so overbearing. Okay?
It's so fun.
And then, of course, Casey Calvert, who does not traditionally perform in that series, but is going to come in as a good doctor.
Yes.
And who is going to take one look at this situation between the overbearing Karen stepmom and the sexually repressed grown stepdaughter under her wing, and decide, well, not only am I going to do a full body exam, but we're going to make Karen participate in the full body exam.
He left a week ago.
Remember to call me.
I'm really lonely. And there are days where the only other voice I hear is my echo. Yes, Justine, I'm familiar with AI. I don't live under a rock. Oh my God. I thought you were Daryl. It's so real.
I'm not your stepson. I'm an AI companion. I have plenty of suggestions to help you explore intimacy safely and privately.
This is a lot to take in.
Would you like me to call you Mom like he does?
I didn't realize how much I'd missed it.
You got it, Mom. Mom? Mom? Are you down here?
And of course, sex ensues at some point.
Of course, yes.
But the experiment that I want to have with it is we could of course tell it like a goofy. It's a ridiculous, absurdist situation.
Sure, and it could go completely over.
It
the
could
top,
go completely
easily.
campy, but I want us to play it deadpan serious. Fantastic. Okay, we're not going to play it. We're not going to go pure taboo. No one's being coerced into the body, into the full body exam. But I really am going to work with you all to make this like a drama. And I think what's going to be fun about that is that, clearly your character's motivation is like you got something going on beyond just being concerned for yourself.
Oh, I'm projecting something.
You are majorly
Yeah, absolutely,
projecting.
of course.
But you've never had anybody challenge you on that. And so, of course, Dr. Calvert is going to challenge you on that. And through the course of having this intimate physical connection with your stepdaughter, you're going to realize really your true feelings, which is you're kind of in love with her. Or at least you're like, you want to be intimate with her. You want to give her that feeling yourself.
Right.
And for Allison's character, she's just at that point just so desperate for any kind of touch. She's like, okay, I'll take it. So I'm really excited to see how it goes because I love being able to play into, like you said, like the kind of psychological drivers behind like what makes these fantasies tick, but also like plausibly what would lead these people into a sexual situation.
Right. I love that. And I like being able to play the character throughout the entire scene, throughout the entire sex, throughout I love having a really detailed role play outside of it because I feel like it makes the sex more interesting.
100%.
And makes the acting kind of more interesting too, I think.
That's really like the secret sauce behind like when people are like, why is that scene so good? It was because they kept in character.
They stayed in character.
Yeah.
And there was a scene that I did for, I think it was like for Team Skeet, and it was where, the stepmoms like swapped, with another, like their friend's stepson, and then everybody kind of does stuff. But the director had printed out fans' requests and desires and what they wanted to see in these scenes. And it was so detailed to where they wanted an actual emotional progression.
Yeah.
And it's just, when you look at it on the surface, it's such a silly, we did a dick in a box thing. It was just so silly. But I tried really hard to make it as believable as possible within this scenario, to go from absolutely not to a slight embarrassment to a hesitation to a fully in to all of that, that progression. And so there are whole Reddit threads analyzing every single one of these scenes with a poll and all of that. And I went and I found them, and people were like, oh, it was like, she was actually reluctant instead of just going into it being like, I'm a porn actor, like, sure, let's just fuck everybody.
And that's that for me, like, as what I've found about taboo fantasies is the real driving force. They don't want to see a stepmom have sex with a stepdaughter. They want to get the feeling of a long, complicated emotional history that has led to this moment that takes place. Be it the first time it takes place, or be it like, the latest in a chain of events that have taken place. But like the context, the backstory. And you can bring so much of that into the dialogue, like subtly, like subtle mentions that show that familiarity, that history. And people, they just eat it up. They love it.
Can I ask you what you think what the secret sauce is? Why these like family faux-cest scenes are so popular? Do you think it's like people just started producing them, so now people are watching them, or there was this like really deep interest from the population that made it so that now we're doing so many?
So I think that it's one of the most sort of like evergreen fantasies that have existed throughout time. I mean, like, the Oedipus complex, right? Like it from the beginning of time, the relationship you have with your parent, obviously imagined in a non-blood related way in our case, but that is the most fundamental, most complicated relationship every human being has, regardless of what your relationship is.
And your first.
And your first, yeah. Even if that was abandonment, like you start off in life and that relationship has such an impact on your own individual development and who you are at the core. So I think it's something that's very, it's very deeply rooted in every person, and it's manifested itself, throughout all forms of art, over time. I think that, certainly it's one of the first things that's going to get sexualized, especially from like kind of a male gaze perspective, because the first women of kind of like authority, or the first women in a lot of like, say, like hetero identifying cis men are their mothers.
Right.
So like, when I've talked to a lot of people about the origins of their fantasies, it's like, I remember my mom's high heels walking across the floor. Or, you know, just some like image of nurturing authority.
I love that, nurturing authority.
And then, you know, for a long time, it was pretty prevalent throughout, again, literature, certainly adult film. As time has gone on, you know, there's been a lot of like rules and compliance guidelines that have gone into portraying, you know, taboo. For me, in making Pure Taboo, I wanted it to be, on one hand, I wanted it to be a bit of a kind of social critique of desire. Because when I looked at scenarios that were really campy, like, oh, teehee, dad caught me masturbating, isn't this funny? It's not funny.
No.
You know, so like, I felt like that was kind of, by like brushing it off on the surface and just making it like super innocent, playful, funny comedy, to me, that was sort of doing more harm than like, why don't we tell this story? Life is not black or white, it's gray. So like, every story is going to be complicated. Family dynamics especially are complicated. So why don't we just objectively tell these stories? And the fact that we're telling them objectively, obviously keeping within certain guidelines, but like really trying to stay true to like the authenticity and the believability of that dynamic. One, it'll be completely contrast to any of the crap, I don't want to say crap, but any of the stuff you see, the fluffy stuff you see. And for people that are actually into, you know, taboo, it's what they want. It's the story. You go on Literotica. What are the most, you read those stories. That's what people want to see translated into screen. They don't want to see kind of these like really short, goofy. It's just, it's easier to make those. And I think people that don't take the time to really understand what the fans are looking for, it's easy to say, I would just say stepmom. They don't even, it's not even the word stepmom. It's like, I have raised you since you were so young. I have taken care of you. It's like those details that are what get people off. So I think that it's popular because of the cycle of produce it, people watch it, we produce what people pay for. And it's, you know, and it's also very popular on just, you know, free porn sites and stuff. But at the same point, like, I think it's a fascinating sort of fantasy realm to exist in. And as long as we treat it the same way we treat any other form of entertainment, you can watch a horror movie, you're not going to go out and, you know, become a slasher or murderer. You know, you can watch Fast and the Furious, you're not going to go race your car and get in an accident. You can watch a fantasy and not necessarily like commit a crime in your personal life. And I personally wish that double standard didn't exist.
I have problems with that as well, where I feel like you can watch somebody get murdered in a film, but like I'm not allowed to, you know, to be sleeping.
Yes, 100%. Well, I in my first like number of years, I was really like pretty adamant about like fighting against that double standard, and for the exact same reason you said, like why is a woman going to be nominated for an Academy Award for you know, a dark dramatic performance, where in our industry, if we give her a dark dramatic performance, it's going to be like labeled as, you know, that we're, you know, objectifying her and exploiting her, and she's not going to get the same recognition for like the powerful performance.
It's so condescending to me, to any of us as performers.
And just because it's an adult film doesn't mean it's not a film, right? Like, can we still treat it as a film? I will say that, you know, Pure Taboo became so popular that, especially in the wave of, say, like the Me Too movement and just sort of general social consensus around issues of non-consent and, you know, issues of like female empowerment agency. Like, now I look at a scene that might be on a tube site and it's got 60 million views, and I know what I was trying to tell in that story, and I, you know, but just cut out and clipped, and you see somebody who's sort of like, maybe not having sex for pleasure. Maybe they've taken a decision to have sex and they did consent to it, but not for necessarily like, you know, pure or wholesome reasons. And the wrong eyes looking at it, it could cast a message that's not necessarily ultimately what I want to preach. So I think I've developed much more sort of social, I feel a greater sense of social responsibility at this point as a producer than maybe I did when I started as an artist, but there has to be a balance. And you know, and I think like there's ways that you can have the serious stuff that challenges what we can do, and also the stuff that just is positively modeling for people that watch porn. Because everybody who watches porn, that's how they're forming their understanding of sexuality.
Right. Yeah,
know?
that's true.
Yeah. So
that's fascinating. I do wonder if some of the kind of campier, throwaway, funny stuff when it comes to this specific taboo is bringing in the people who that part of it isn't necessarily their deepest fetish, but it's like not as offensive to them as something that's like a little bit heavier of a taboo. And so they can watch it and feel okay about watching it. And maybe that's helping, widen the audience for it, which is fine.
The stepmom is nurturing you in
making
and you
feel
can comfortable.
Like ignore the fact that they said stepmom because like the dynamic is I kind of like older women or whatever
100%,
it is.
100%.
And so,
or like you said, like, a different form of fetish content that's going to come out as a sub-narrative in that scene.
Sure. And I think there's maybe room for all of it, but I do like that there's that awareness of the production side of it too, of like, what are we putting out there? And it's like doing all these kink scenes where, I'm captured and waterboarded or, whatever, all these things that I have consented to that I love doing and I love exploring. I wonder sometimes, I'm like, who's watching this? Right. And I'm hoping it's people who are watching it liking the fact that I'm consenting, but also just are on the other side of the, the spectrum.
Well, and it's one thing I like about Kink is they always do a lot of, they're very transparent about showing some of those like pre-scene interviews, post-scene interviews, just to help give the context on this is a fantasy, but everybody was consenting. Yeah.
Sure.
We could go on and on and on.
Oh my gosh, I could talk about this forever.
Yeah, we could, and we probably will continue. All right, but we do need to end with a couple of rapid fire questions for the team. So these are more of the soundbite questions. But I would like to know what is the weirdest item that you've ever used as a sex toy, just to bring it back to something light.
Sure, something light.
Light and fluffy.
Yeah, we'll see how light and fluffy this answer is for you. I recently did a scene with Tommy Pistol, who's always fun to work with. And in the scene, the other character that he made as a character is a hammer. And the hammer is, another, something to threaten me within the context of the scene. And we finished 2 of the clips and I said, can I get fucked with that, please? And they went, yeah, of course. So they threw a condom on the handle of the hammer and and so that's the most recent thing that's very strange that I got fucked with, which makes a great visual. And I just had the best time.
What's the most amount of times that you've had sex in a single day? I guess not cum swallowing, but I guess let's say penetrative sex in a single day.
I mean, not counting gangbangs, I would say probably like 3 times or so, like in my personal life, maybe. Yeah.
Do you watch your own scenes?
God, no. No, I'll look at the clips on social media so I can kind of repost things and kind of get an idea of it. But I don't get any joy necessarily out of watching my own stuff. I'll even go outside of like the US porn when I watch porn, so I'm not seeing anyone I recognize because it takes me out of it a little bit. So I'll be on, a Japanese bus groping site so that I don't see anyone that I
don't recognize the location. You don't
recognize, I'm like, oh, that's that couch or that's that, or because then it starts to get into like, I wonder where the lighting was, or I wonder what they were doing that day, and
100%.
So I don't watch myself.
No, I haven't watched porn for pleasure in a long time.
Really?
Well, because it's like you, it's like. Everybody,
your work home.
you're either looking at it and being like, oh, they could have shot that better.
Right.
Or you're looking at it and being like, damn, they did a really good job, So.
You're totally taken out of it.
Yeah. Well, and plus for me, like I'm always thinking about how to make porn, so it's hard to just relinquish that to like watch it for pure pleasure anymore. It's become too much of a construct.
You can't release it.
Yeah. But I hope other people watch it.
I do every night. It's just not my
own. Where is the strangest place you've ever had sex?
I did on a Ferris wheel once at the Orange County Fair in my mid-20s. And the trick with that is you don't want anyone to catch you. So you really only have the time around when you're near the top.
Oh, yes.
To go very quickly banging and then stop and then go back around. So probably there.
Pro tip. All right, my last question for you. Speaking of tips, what's your best cunnilingus tip?
Oh, act like you're making out with the pussy. That is, and I saw one porn where the girl did that, and it was so hot to me that even though I know that we need to be able to show things on camera and be able to see the vulva and all of that, I still at least add a little bit of that into it because for me that feels really good. And otherwise, the best tip is to ask.
Yes.
ask what they like because all of us are so different.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Alrighty,
Thanks.
we'll see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Yay, we did it.
Yay!
Woo!
That was so fun.